3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Astronaut crews that live and work in space oftentimes experience loneliness and isolation, like many of us have experienced over the course of this global pandemic. Consider these circumstances. Number one, they're physically isolated, working with a small crew, and then the rest of their interactions are digitally mediated. Second, their home is also their workplace. And then finally, they're surrounded by an environment that's dangerous. So what can we learn from NASA about re-entering into an environment where we're around more people after coming out of relative social isolation? 3 issues we should all be mindful of coming out of the pandemic. First of all, we're going to be somewhat lethargic in our social skills because our brain has adapted to being in a less complex social environment. Even those of us who are looking forward to getting back to the office, the extroverts, they're going to feel a little off their game and not necessarily understand why. Take, for example, Scott Kelly, the astronaut who worked on the International Space Station for a year. When Kelly returned, he observed that, in my case, returning from space and isolation was instantaneous, shocking, and anxiety-producing. I should have eased into it. Having conversations really is important to this re-entry process. So in our case, going back into the physical workplace, we need to be intentional about connecting with people. The second factor is that our cognitive abilities are going to be somewhat impaired because we've lived in isolation. For example, Scott Kelly, the astronaut, when he spent a year on the International Space Station and came back, NASA noticed that there was a decline in his cognitive skills. His speed and accuracy at solving problems was diminished when he came back from space. And that persisted for 6 months and then eventually went away. So that's good news that we're not as fast. We're not performing at the top of our game when we come back, but that will self-correct over time. Managers should be mindful of this as an opportunity to cultivate a culture of connection. In a culture of connection, you'll find that people feel connected to their supervisor, to their colleagues, to the people they serve through their work. And that's in contrast to a culture that's disconnecting. And we found in our research that there are 2 types of cultures that are disconnecting. First of all, there's the culture of control. And that's where those who have power, control, and influence, they rule over the rest. And the second type of disconnecting culture is a culture of indifference. That's where people are so busy with tasks and focusing on results that they're not intentional about developing relationships, and that need for connection is not met, so they start to dysfunction. NASA understands that disconnection can sabotage the mission's success. So there are a few things to be aware of. In contrast to disconnection, connection is a superpower. It makes us smarter, happier, and more productive. It also makes us more resilient to cope with stress. And in teams and organizations, those groups benefit from connection in several ways. First of all, they experience higher employer engagement, tighter strategic alignment, better quality of decisions, higher rate of innovation, and they're also more agile and adaptable to pursue external opportunities or respond to external threats. So those benefits are all different, but together they add up to a powerful source of performance and competitive advantage. Secondly, we need to help people understand how to connect. And that really breaks down into 3 things. Number one, what are our attitudes, our mindsets that are connecting? So for example, expecting the best in others is a mindset that helps us connect. Second, what language is connecting and disconnecting? And I think of one organization that uses the term colleagues rather than employees, and that colleagues is a more egalitarian term that's connecting than thinking of people as just employees, more like human resources. And then finally, what actions are connecting and disconnecting? So for example, do we push people to go through lunch quickly and just have lunch at their desk? Well, that's not very connecting. But when we give people time to have lunch together and have conversations, that's connecting. So this time we're in presents a unique opportunity for several reasons. Number one, people are coming out of the pandemic longing to connect. And when they come back into the physical workplace and they experience that something's off, they're going to want to do something to correct that. So this is an extraordinary time for managers to be intentional about cultivating a culture of connection. Just as astronauts experience their own transition period during re-entry, so will we.